At my time at Pine Ridge, lots of experiences. The one that struck me the most profoundly was the time that we went to the site of the Wounded Knee massacre. And I am able to express myself a little bit better if I put it into a poem. So I'm going to share with you in a poem what my experience was like there. December 29th, 1890, hell rained down on the Wounded Knee Lakota. U.S. cavalry slaughtered over 300 men, women, children, left them dying or frozen, buried Wounded Knee Lakota in a mass grave high on a hill. Any that were still alive in that grave were buried, still breathing, no ceremony, no prayers into the afterlife. June 14th, 2023, I arrived by bus at Wounded Knee. I exited to silence. Mouths were moving on the other travelers, but I could not hear them. 300 or more spirits circle above Wounded Knee. 300 or more spirits not at rest. 300 or more spirits came to rest on my heart. I slowly turned to the four directions. My hands opened to receive them. The weight of their pain and sorrow became my pain and sorrow. Silently, I began to cry. Thank you.
So this is the part where we all get to talk a short bit about what was most meaningful to us on this trip. I had two thoughts. One is I will never forget the sight in that big room that you saw go by that we all met in. There was taped to the wall pieces of paper like this, one on top of another. They went from the floor up to the ceiling, maybe as high as these, and over. And on those sheets of paper were typed, single space, like this, every single treaty that the United States had ever broken with the Native people. Hundreds upon hundreds of treaties where our government promised to take care of the Native people in exchange for taking control of their land. And then we discovered gold in the Black Hills and decided that treaty really wouldn't work anymore and shoved a new one. It was really distressing. And it also took care of, for me, that I don't know if anybody else has ever had this little niggle, and I'm slightly ashamed to admit it, but I will admit it, when we give our land acknowledgement every week. I know I've heard it expressed by others, like, why do we do that? Like, that's a long time ago. This doesn't matter anymore. It's all done and over. And then I think of the people living on the Pine Ridge Reservation, which, as you can see, is rough, dry, barren, scraggy land, but it's the last little piece of land they have, and they're doing their darndest to keep their culture alive and hang on to their ancestral land. And what little we could do to help them, they're more than welcome to have from me. I'm happy to be able to help. I think I'll leave it there because I don't want to take everybody else's time.
So when we got back from Remember, I jotted down memories that I had of a particular workday. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. I call this the lemonade stand. It was the third workday at Remember. We piled into a van that took us to our work site. On the way there, I peered out the window and tried to process what I had experienced so far this week. We passed through the town of Pine Ridge, which consisted of a few stores and a gas station. People outside sat in doorways, and some in picnic tables in front of a church. Just down the street from the center of town is where we would find our work site. It was a trailer, most likely a FEMA trailer, possibly brought here by the federal government and sold to the tribal council as surplus for housing. It looked like it had been there for decades. There was a broken down pickup truck sitting in front of it, and it was stuffed to the brim of what appeared to be trash. We later learned that many people felt like this was like a bank to them, that was a representation of their wealth. If they needed something, they could find it there, or they could use the scrap metal to buy things by turning them in. Next to the trailer sat above a small above-ground pool and a picnic table with half of the boards missing. In the lot next to the pool was a heap of metal and burnt plastic that was clearly once a trailer that had been ravaged by a fire, which was a common occurrence in the winter, we were told. Our first job was to clear the debris and remove any boards and nails from the bottom of the trailer. One of the volunteers asked if we had brought any trash bags. And I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea, but somebody's going to have to take all of those trash bags someplace to dump. And then as we started clearing things, and it was layered pretty deep, we discovered some children's toys in the mess, and I wondered if we would risk throwing away a child's favorite possession. We finished this work, which included trimming small trees to be able to access the trailer base in some areas. At one point, two boys emerged from the trailer next to us and started to build a fort with wood pallets and other items that they could find. One was wearing a laser tag vest, and the other one put on a yellow plastic toy hard hat. And I started to wonder if their play was an imitation of our team, as part of our team started to construct a deck and new stairs for the trailer. The heat began to set in, and we became more determined to finish the job we had started. And then one of the volunteers walked up with a styrofoam cup filled with lemonade and a couple of slices of lemon. Across the street, a little girl had opened a lemonade stand. I grabbed my money, and with Till, we headed over. As soon as we walked up and paid our $1 for our lemonade, the girl exclaimed, "Wait, we are out of ice." She ran into the trailer and emerged with a plastic container with ice cubes that usually come in a plastic bag from the convenience store. We talked for a bit, and I learned that art was her favorite subject. She liked to draw dogs and cats and had ready waiting subjects for her drawing. She introduced us to her 3 dogs that were lounging in the shade next to us. I told her that I had seen a sign for an art contest in town, and she told me she knew who would win, because those are the people that always win the art contests. As we were talking, her mother counted out the money that they had earned and instructed the girl to get more lemons because they were out, and told her they were $5 a bag. Having been to one of the local grocery stores, I wondered if lemons were even available right now. I told the girl that we should get back to work, and she said, "If they give you a hard time for taking such a long break, just tell them you had to wait for ice." It made me chuckle because she was really the first person to be concerned about us stepping away from the work to talk with the people around us. In fact, that was one of the things we were encouraged to do, was to meet and interact with those around us. Sometimes it was difficult, like the day before when we delivered beds to a trailer further away from town, and there was a teenager in charge of a 9-year-old that was clearly stoned and guarding her marijuana plant by the steps of the front entrance to the trailer. The 9-year-old was super excited to receive her bunk beds. She came out to greet us with a puppy in her arms and warned us that the puppy bites a little. And then was even more delighted when one of the volunteers sat down and read a book to her while we loaded the beds into the trailer. So what I learned at Remember is that we are all related. Mitakuye asoin. Water, or mini, is life, and water is medicine. Through art and music, we can heal. We learned that Indian children were forced into schools, abused, and taught to be ashamed of their culture. Yet now, one of the local schools has started a dual language program, English and Lakota, in their K through 2 school. We learned that on the reservation, jobs are not available. Fresh produce is rarely available. And many elders believe that reconnecting with the roots and the land will heal future generations. The Lakota people are kind, welcoming, and optimistic in a way I'm not sure I could be given similar circumstances. Because of Remember, we were welcomed into the community, and I came home a different person. And not just in the way that you change when your eyes are open to injustice that you previously didn't understand, but my perspective was shifted and widened to the entire world around us.
So, when I went up there, I didn't really expect what it would look like. I had never seen anything really quite like it before. Like my mother described as cars filled to the brim with trash. But what I did notice is that one of the most prominent themes there was hope. That was something that was not very scarce there. Is hope. The hope that it will get better, that there is things that can be done, and that there are people like us that are willing to go there and willing to help these people. And while I was there, I saw this car on the side of the road that looked like it had been towed there for a few years now and had been sitting. And on one of our trips back to our main base where we would sleep and eat, I saw this car getting worked on a few days after seeing it sitting there, which reinforced that sense of hope that this old vehicle, that a lot of these vehicles there that they use to get around oftentimes just have a broken window or missing doors, because to them that's normal. Out there, if a door breaks, it's not like here where we need to get that fixed right away. It's, oh, a door fell off. I guess we'll keep that door for later, and we'll just not have a door for a few months, maybe even a year. But all of these pieces of scrap, things that we take as trash here, are to them very valuable. They can sell parts of these things, and if a sudden $200 expense comes up, they can sell, part of the exhaust of one of their cars to pay for it. Which surprised me that even something that we see as trash can be so valuable to them. And that sort of switch is what got flipped in me. And out there, I kind of, what I saw as previously as useless suddenly became this wonderful thing. And so that's what I thought of my experience there.
I just have 4 things that I kind of remembered when I was there. Mostly basically like what you take for granted when you go there, what I took for granted. I was kind of shocked. And just at the end of the week, a cold Diet Coke was a wonderful thing to have. I remember building and painting an outhouse with Till. That was one of the work days. And I also skirted a trailer with Rory. And I learned to drive an RV. So those are my takeaways from
I think the biggest takeaway that I had from Remember was just the sense of community that there was between the people that shared love and respect for our Native community.
I loved that we could watch our young adults be so excited and fit in and work so hard during this time, and watch them with these Texas returns that do this quite a bit. A number of Texan girls with their brother. It was such a, I don't know, it just gave me such a feeling to see all of these young people working hard, putting forth this energy. Another thing I want to share that I just remembered, Janet Burns, was such a vital member of our community, so wanted to go. This was one of her dreams, and she was in a lot of pain during that time. She shared that part of our time was spent where we went to a trading post, and she really didn't want to buy anything and probably didn't feel too well. So she was sitting out on the porch, and there were 2 women there. They may have been related, and they were selling their jewelry. And so Janet engaged in conversation like Janet would, and she ended up buying some of their items. So she bought, anyway, she bought some items, and they were like, oh, they counting their money, and they went, now we have enough to go to the powwow, and they closed up and they left. All they wanted was to get enough money so they could go to their evening event. And that touched her. Thank you.
I can't even begin to share all of the things that touched me during our week at Pine Ridge. I'm going to start with a couple facts that I didn't know. We, the U.S., set aside some land for our reservations and said, this is your land that you can be on. But what I never realized is when we set that land aside, we didn't give up ownership of the land. That land is forever set aside for the use of the Native American populations, but they don't own it. So if you consider as an adult wanting to buy a house, the tribal council would let you have a house, but you didn't own it. So if you wanted to use that house as collateral for something, there's no wealth there. You can't use it as collateral. The land is not your own land. It is owned by the United States government and leased in perpetuity to the native tribe. In this case, it was the Ogallala Lakota. And that, to me, was very disturbing. And it made me recognize why wealth is such an issue there. There isn't a place to pour your wealth into to invest it. It's all owned by us still. The second thing is unemployment on the reservation is high. It can be as high as 89% at any given time. And so we have teenagers and young adults coming of age in a place where there is no ability to invest in your own future. There's not a lot of ability to get a job. And it felt really hopeless. And then in came the person who taught us the native flutes and made them available for us to purchase. And he talked about a program he started for the teens and young adults. Access to health care, by the way, there isn't much. And mental health care is pretty much supported by the tribal council and the families. There wasn't a lot of mental health care at all available. So in steps Will Peters with his flutes, and he takes a group of teenagers who had no jobs, were trying to work to help their families, but with not a lot of prospects. And he took these kids and he taught them how to play the flute. And he taught them how to pour their emotions into the flute, and how taking that flute home and meditating with the flute in nature could bring them peace and allow them to find a place of hope. And they came and they shared their work with us, and it touched me so deeply that it was no question where I was going to spend my money. I spent it on the flute and on practicing with the group of kids who came to play with us. So that's the moment that I take away from me that offers the most hope, is that in the midst of this place that to me feels so hopeless, that there were people working with our teens and young adults to help inspire and give them tools for hope as they went forward with their lives. And that's the thing I take away most, is that hopeful feeling that comes from creating music together.